Hello, Namaskar. Welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis. My name is Juggi Bhasin. Today, I want to contrast two state of beings. There was a time I remember before the 20th of this month when words like nationalism, words like expansionism, words like border security were taboo. They were not spoken of, they were not supposed to be polite, they were not part of the liberal narrative. In fact, the people who spoke about them were looked down upon both in the public as well as by the media. And look how everything has changed after the 20th of this month. These words, the same three words, are now being talked about, but they are talked about, if not by a degree of veneration, but they are talked about with certainly a degree of respectability. And suddenly, this talk of America acquiring Greenland is no longer, let's say, in a figment of somebody's imagination. It is becoming a very, very real possibility. But notice something else also, something very interesting. The responses to this talk of America acquiring Greenland is not being met by anger. It is not being met by rage. It is being met by a mixture of consternation or a mixture of maybe humor or the fact, oh, can America really do this? What can Europe do about it? Contrast this, of course, with the time when Putin made his moves on Ukraine, that is more than 2 years back. And then the responses that at that time were completely different. There were responses were angry, outrage was there. The United Nations had jumped in, everybody had jumped in at that time. But this broadcast is not about the Ukraine or the Russia situation or the contrast with what America is planning to do if it does about Greenland. It is about us. It is about India. What is India's response to these developments? Because there are some very important lessons we need to learn at is what is going on the world stage right now, because we can pick something up from there and use it for our own benefit. I'm going to talk about all that in this particular podcast. So let me start by saying that the time probably has come now when India needs to deploy its own version of the Monroe Doctrine. Now, what is the Monroe Doctrine? First, let me explain that, and then I'll tell you why in India, we need a kind of a Desi version of the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine is a foreign policy doctrine of the United States, for it has been there for decades and decades and decades, where essentially it really is telling to Europe that hands off the Americas, don't interfere in the Americas. This is our sphere of influence. This is what is known as American exceptionalism. This was the Monroe Doctrine. I'm arguing in this podcast that time has come. We also need to have something kind of an India doctrine, which is a version of the Monroe Doctrine, that the subcontinent is our sphere of influence and hands off to other powers, which definitely means China, which definitely means even the United States to that matter, even Pakistan, that this is our sphere of influence. And I'm going to talk about two particular issues which are very, very important to us right now, which should be addressed in the light of these particular developments. The first issue is the issue of Chicken's Neck or the Siliguri corridor. That is of prime importance to us. I'm going to talk about what it means and why is it suddenly so becomes so important in relation to what is really going on in the world today. And the second is the issue of illegal migration. Now, before I even do that, let's understand something. Big powers have a way of getting their way. And all this talk by America of acquiring Greenland is no longer being viewed as poppycock or as something which is like, as I said, a figment of the imagination, but it could become very, very real. Either America could pressure Denmark, or it could buy it off, or maybe it could even send troops. They could do either the same thing in the Panama Canal also. All this is becoming suddenly very real. And why is it important for America? Is it for lark's sake that the administration in America wants to acquire Greenland? Not really. I think there is a strategic role play which is going on out here, strategic interest which serves America. Because by acquiring Greenland, what America is really saying is that it safeguards its northernmost borders, not only from Russia, but to that extent also keeps the European influence under check. That's the reason why they want to acquire Greenland. Big powers have their way, as I argue. So you would argue that, oh, we are not in the league of America. If America think they can do it, then how do you assume that India can also do it? I'm arguing in this podcast that now the time has come when India can actually start thinking like America and get its way. And why would that be? Because of two or three very simple reasons. India is no longer a middling power or an inferior power, it is a rising power. It is a country not taken very, very seriously by practically everybody in the world. We sit on the high table in just about every forum in the world. And what are the reasons for that? The reasons for that are very simple. Is of course our population dividend, which is unmatched, and also the fact that we have this large talent pool of youngsters in this country, which not only works within the country, propelling India forward, but it also is a great export commodity for us because our talented youngsters, right from the lowest of the lowest, that is from the laborers to the hospital workers to the nursing staff, right up to the technology workers to management people, everybody, they're all contributing in the world. And Indian skilled workers are taken very, very seriously in the world. They are the best bet for so many countries, as we know from example. That's the first part of it. And the second part of it is that we have the fourth largest army in the world. Don't forget that. Some would even say the third largest army in the world. We also are a technological power. We are in terms of technology. We are also becoming a digital, not only a power, a digital superpower. I would in fact argue. So all these factors, I would say, make India a country which is, in a certain sense, no less important than America. And therefore, I'm arguing that if America can get its way, if America can acquire Greenland, if America can make talk, or rather try to make plans to acquire Greenland, or show its intent that it wants to acquire the Panama Canal also, if America can pressure countries in the Americas, the latest case being that of Colombia, as you would have seen, that the pressure was applied by the American administration, and Colombia within a day changed its policy, and they allowed the illegal migrants who had gone from Colombia to America to come back. The planes carrying them were allowed to land in Colombia, in Bogota. Now, if America can do that, then we also can do. And what do we need to do? Two things, and I'm going to talk about these two issues in this podcast today. The number one and the most pressing issue is the Siliguri corridor, or the chicken's neck issue, which we need to do something about it. Now, what exactly is this issue? The Siliguri corridor, or the chicken's neck as it is popularly called, is a small tract of land in West Bengal. It is, I think, barely about 20 to 22 kilometers. It's not a very big piece of land, but it's a point which it is a land which, to that extent, I think you have Nepal, you have Bhutan, and you have certainly Bangladesh, which kind of surround this area. Imagine a scenario where this land goes out of our hands, maybe in some kind of an action or something, or in tomorrow something unforeseen happens and it goes out of our hands. Then what would really happen is that the entire northeastern, the seven sister states, would be cut off from India. That is the tremendous importance of the Siliguri corridor. And it is a vulnerable point, it's a choke point, not only from a military point of view, but also from a transportation point of view, from the ferrying of goods and services to, as I said, to northeast and other parts. It's that vital link. It is actually, in a certain sense, the Panama Canal of India, in a certain sense, if you think about it. It's like a gateway to the Northeast. And if by unforeseen circumstances, something which is out of our control, it is cut off, then the Northeast gets completely cut off from India. And that's why, what is the need of the hour? The need of the hour is that India has to do something about the Siliguri corridor. And keep in mind also, now we have a government in Bangladesh, and all those people who are arguing, oh, there is now a change of government in the United States and they will fix this fellow Muhammad Yunus who's in Bangladesh. I'm not too sure it's if all that is going to happen. I still think that the change which has happened in Bangladesh is not going to go away so quickly. We have to be prepared now for a very long, long time that there will be hostile governments will rule in Bangladesh, hostile to us, that is to India. We have to be prepared for that. And therefore, keeping that in mind, uh, something has to be done about the Siliguri corridor, because supposing for God's in an unforeseen situation, if this corridor is taken away from us, or it is choked, or we cannot access it, then the northeast gets cut off from us. And therefore, this comes the Indian version of the Monroe Doctrine, which I'm arguing that it is time now that India really starts thinking of acquiring and extending this piece of land. Those 20 to 22 kilometers now need to be extended to almost 70 to 100 kilometers to make it more, to give us more breathing space, to give our army more comfort, to have that wriggle room or that elbow room that we can meet any threat which comes from Bangladesh. And how do you acquire this extra 70 to 80 kilometers? There are two or three ways of doing it. One is that you enter into very serious and intense discussions with the Bangladeshi government, which of course they are not going to listen to, as we all know. Actually, we should have done that with the Sheikh Hasina government when we really had the leverage at that point. We should have asked her that in the spirit of good neighbors, they have to secede this extra land to us. But we have to start that process with this Yunus government, which, as I said, they will not listen to. And therefore, the other options should be on the table, that we might have to use military force to force the issue. But it is absolutely important now, the time has come, that this 70 to 80 kilometers land should be acquired. Keeping in mind also another recent development, that a senior team of the IS, that the inter-services intelligence of the Pakistan Army, that team had gone to Bangladesh. They had actually inspected this area, that something be done about here. And on the surface, yes, of course, on the in public they are saying that there's nothing much we can do. But I don't trust the Pakistanis or the Bangladeshis for that matter. And therefore, it is time India seizes the initiative, and like a responsible but a mighty big power, it, as I said, it rolls out its own version of the Monroe Doctrine, of the India Doctrine, that we want to breathe easy, we want to have space, we want to ensure that there are no hostile forces that threaten our sovereignty, and therefore this land corridor has to be extended. That is the number one priority for India. That's the first part of it. Then the second issue. And the second issue, again, I'm going to take examples from what is happening in America and say that if that can happen in America, why can't it happen in India? And that's the issue of illegal migration. Now, we know about the Americas. We are seeing now pictures and reports of ICE agents, American ICE agents. And in case you do not know what ICE stands for, then ICE stands for US Immigration and Custom Enforcement. These are the ICE officers. They have this big ICE flak jackets which they are wearing. They will go in and they are herding off all these illegal migrants, packing them in buses, taking them to transport planes, which are now ferrying all across Central America, as we know. That process has already started. Then the elite of the US Army, even their Marines, have been deployed at the southern border. We also know about that. That is in the news. Now, what is happening in India? We have tens and thousands, lakhs, crores, I would say, of Bangladeshi illegal migrants who have flooded the country. They're still coming in to that extent. Yes, we are talking about it. Yes, there is a noise being made about it, but I'm not too sure anything much is being done about it even today. Um, the character of so many regions in West Bengal has actually changed completely because of this illegal migration. And we have seen in the elections that how these illegal migrants, unscrupulous politicians in our own country, are getting them Aadhaar cards, they are getting them voting rights, citizenship rights, and they are changing the demography, they are changing the entire democratic pattern in the country to that extent. And therefore, we need to roll out our own version of ICE. We need to roll out our own version of strict enforcement where these illegal migrants are pushed back. I don't think so. We can send planes to Dhaka and they land there and live, but we need to push them across the border. That needs to be done ASAP. That is the need of the hour. Also, let's try and understand the implications, what's happening in America, and how these things are setting a kind of an agenda for the rest of the world. The new administration's efforts to get rid of the illegal migrants in the country, eventually, I'm not too sure if they can achieve 100% of it, but even if this, let's say they achieve 20, 30% of it, 40% of it, or whatever figure, I don't know. It's still great. But the important thing is they are showing intent. This is what needs to be done in India also. We also need to show intent. And how do you show intent? You don't show intent by just politicians making speeches or coming on national television and people are arguing ad nauseum, we go on arguing, and then nothing happens after that. You need to show a narrative where people believe that really the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. And what do I mean by that? I mean to that now we need to have specialized forces, people are paramilitaries or whatever, make them wear these flak jackets with illegal migrants, who are going after that. Show those scenes on national television. Seeing is believing. Partly why the world fears America, the world believes also in America to that extent, is because there is so much of this being shown on television. We need to do the same thing out there. If we are pushing back migrants from the Bangladesh border, then show it. We need television teams to record all that. We need that action to be taken. There's just no point in these statements which keep coming from the MEA, that is the Ministry of External Affairs. Oh, we are looking for good neighborly relations with Bangladesh. Forget about all that. Junk all this talk. This is the time now to take a tough, stringent call vis-a-vis Bangladesh, because nothing is going to change there, nothing is going to improve there, it's going to get worse, and we have to be prepared. And before we land up in a situation where if something is forced upon us, it is better we become proactive, we deploy our own version of the Monroe Doctrine, that we are not going to allow this. In fact, whatever illegal people there are in the country, they have to be pushed back. Seeing is believing. Because remember, what happens in America does not get only contained in America, it spreads all over the world. And that's why I'm arguing in this podcast that we need to do something similar here in India to send a message all over the subcontinent that India means business. Yes, we will be friends, we will be good neighbors with whoever wants to be with us. But if people want to make a Mickey of us, they want to exploit us, we will not tolerate that. That kind of aggressive intent, I still feel, is still missing in our country. It is still not there. And that is the crying need of the hour. So, two major issues. If we have to take a learning out of what is happening in America vis-a-vis Greenland, vis-a-vis the Panama Canal, vis-a-vis the illegal migrants, and it is this, that we need to, number one, I'm repeating once more, we need to expand the Siliguri corridor to about 100 kilometers to make it safe for us. And number two, we have to push back the illegal Bangladeshi migrants from India. That's the need of the hour. And so, on this note, I come to the end of this particular podcast. I hope you like it. I also want to make a bit of an announcement in the sense that we will be expanding our show. We will be going beyond politics now. We'll be looking at so many social issues which are there in our country. The CAA show will bring that also. I will be also be doing more interviews with very, very interesting people. And also, I will be covering entertainment. I'll be talking about some of the new releases, film releases, both at OTT and in cinema theaters. I'm going to talk about that also. All that in the CAA show. And therefore, I'll depart on this line that please subscribe to the channel. It's a very, very interesting channel. All you have to do is press that red button on your screen and nothing else. Everything else is taken care of. And so, on this note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.